So that's a picture of me, let's see, I think December 2019. That's Carpinteria, that's the beach. So I lived in one of the houses here for a long time in Sandyland Cove. Um, but then the beach I work on as a lifeguard is just down from that shot. And I live about a block and a half up the street. So basically I just wanted to walk down the street, pack up my kayak, and then paddle out to the island. So that was December of 2019. So I'm just packing up, gearing up, and then I think it was about a 7 or 7.5 hour crossing to Santa Cruz.
20 miles?
23, yeah.
You very many people do that?
No. No,
And
no,
survive?
no. The last 5 I've done by myself. Yeah.
Wow.
Mainly I'm worried about fog and wind and being in the shipping lanes for as short amount of time as possible. I have a radio, I have flares, I have everything I need, yeah, to get across. So the last crossing I did was March 5th of this year. Yeah, got a little window and got home. Yeah.
How long did it take?
About 6.5 hours in. Yeah, it was a perfect day. And then the wind blew like crazy ever since, just about. Anyway, so I like this shot just because it kind of encompasses where I start and where I finish, and you can see some of my gear there: paddles, spare paddles, lots of dry bags. I gotta live out of dry bags. I keep all my camera gear in my lap in a dry bag, just in case whales, dolphins, things like that, great whites, orcas. So.
Have you ever been tipped over by any of those?
No, no. I once had a gray whale tail under the bow of the boat, but it was they were very they were sunbathing on the surface. We see dolphins. I mean, on the Island Packer boat, we see dolphins virtually every day. The other night I came in from work. I think that was Sunday evening, and it was like one of the biggest feeding frenzies I've seen in a while. Just thousands upon thousands of common dolphins and thousands of black-vented shearwaters. I mean, everything's just going this way, just going crazy because there's so much food. Well, deeper water, I mean, the channel, when you're heading out across the channel and you hit the oil platforms, they're in anywhere from like 80 to 200 feet of water. But then the ocean, or the channel, it just drops off abruptly in about 900 feet of water. It's very abrupt. So that's where you get that cold upwelling current of phytoplankton and zooplankton, all that nutrient-rich water just rising to the surface. That's what feeds everything out there. So my girlfriend, she's a naturalist on the boat. She used to work on the boats in the 90s, and they would never see humpback whales. And now we have humpback whales out there year-round. So we saw 4 the other day when I went out. Saw a mom with a calf. And so, yeah, there's a lot of life out there for sure. It's one of the best places in the world to see whales and dolphins, seals and seabirds and sea lions. That's me paddling across from Santa Rosa to Santa Cruz Island. Looks like a nice day, right? Yeah, it was a real pain to get across there. So out here in this passage, this is the Santa Cruz Passage. It's one of the most dangerous passages in the world, but you wouldn't know it looking at it like that. But there's something out there called the potato patch. And it's this undulating currents that they don't go like this, up and down or across. They go like this. And you can't really see them all the time, but on a day like that, I can look over to my right and you can see like little waves breaking in there. But there's a current there that day. I wasn't going anywhere. I was on a treadmill and I was paddling as hard as I could. And I wasn't getting anywhere, and I was cursing at myself and digging my feet into the footwells in my boat and pushing my rear end really hard into the seat just to grind it out. And then finally I felt this release and I was out of it. And I was able to make my way to the west end of Santa Cruz. So yeah, the passages between the islands can be a challenge. That's a keyhole arch. That's on Santa Cruz. That's a place called Cueva Valdez. And there's some amazing cave system there, sea caves. That was last spring. I was left there to paddle across back to Carpinteria. And it was a perfect day. Yeah, it was really boring. I didn't see anything. I didn't see any whales or dolphins or seals or sea lions, and luckily I had some music going. Um, but anyway, as you can see, that's a windy day. That's Anacapa Island out there in the horizon, and you can see all those white caps out there. And everything got closed down that day. The boats didn't come out, no kayak tours, and so I was stuck. And so I thought, well, I'm just gonna hike. I'm gonna take the long route, the off trail from Scorpion, and then I headed up to Montagnon Ridge, which was the second highest point on the island. It's like 1,800 feet or so. And so I wanted to do that, so I just took the whole day. I had the whole day off and spent it in the wind up in those canyons, and just gorgeous. I love the shades of blue in that picture. That's kind of the landscape. You see these big sea stacks out there, and that's all bird guano, seabird guano. So you can tell it's a popular spot with all the seabirds. We have about 14, 15 different species of seabirds that utilize the islands for breeding and nesting habitat, and they actually nest in the rock or in the cliffs. They don't really build a nest. They just kind of find a little depression, and then they scooch out a spot, and that's where they drop their eggs. So they're, a lot of them are little tiny birds. I mean, they're as big as your palm of your hand, but they're hardy as can be, because once they finish their nesting season, they're back out on the water, and they're out there, for 9 months sometimes. So they can handle a lot. So that's a big blowhole, and so I always envision these sea lions as a scene in maybe The Godfather or something, where the kids are playing around a broken fire hydrant. And the sea lions, so what they do is they bask on the bluff, and then when they get too hot, they go jumping over where the blowhole is and cool off. And then they go back to their sunbathing over there on the bluff. So this is an incredible blowhole on the south side of Santa Barbara Island, which is the smallest island in the national park. It's only 1 square mile, but it's loaded with sea lions. There's thousands of sea lions all the way around. It's basically just a cliff. There are no beaches. There's a little landing cove. And that's it. But yeah, there's thousands of sea lions out there, and it's really fun paddling with them. They're very playful. And this looks like springtime, right? Yeah, this is October of 2020, and that's a lot of buckwheat. Those pink flowers. Those are natives, and that's Harris Point out there in the distance. Fog drip is the largest water input out of the island. It's not rain. So sometimes you get these second and third blooms with certain species of wildflower out there. So they just start blooming no matter what time of year it is. So that's one of the hikes out on San Miguel Island. I work as a volunteer ranger out there. And so to be on the island and you want to go hiking, you have to go with a ranger, because there's still apparently live ordnance from World War II. That San Miguel Island used to be a bombing range out there then. So there's 4 or 5 trails that we take people on, and Harris Point is one of them. That's a great sunset spot.
How long is it?
That one's, I think it's 6 miles round trip. Yeah. That's where I work. That's Scorpion Anchorage. That's Scorpion Rock in the background. And when I'm paddling out there, I'm trying to look for photos that I want to get. And I was leading a tour early that day, and I saw these seaside daisies blooming up on the cliff there. And so those are 4 kayak guides, and I gathered them up, got them in the kayaks, and then the pelicans were just a bonus when they flew in. So yeah, it all worked out really well.
The water looks so clear. You can see.
Usually is, unless the swell's big, and then it gets a little cloudy, but most of the time it's very clear. So this is one of these rare, elusive seabirds that we have out on the islands. These are called Cassin's auklets, and they're a small bird. Cassin's, it's spelled capital C-A-S-S-I-N apostrophe S, and then auklet is spelled A-U-K-L-E-T. So they're a very small nocturnal seabird. But I was paddling across the channel once, and I always look for seabirds like this when I'm crossing to get some shots of them. But they actually nest on this rock. There's about 40 nests on that rock of just that bird. But another 7 different species utilize just that rock alone for breeding and nesting. So it's great seeing them out on the water, out in the middle of the channel. They're very tiny. They're hard to find, especially when you're sitting low on a kayak. And that's one of their chicks. So the biologist is, what they do during the day is they go into the nests, and then they'll pull the chicks out and they'll put a little band on their leg so they keep track of them, because a lot of the birds will come back to the same site year after year. So and then they write down in a notebook, and then they take it back to the lab and they punch it in the computer, and then they track the life cycle of these birds.
Are the parents in the nest when they're doing that?
Sometimes.
Nocturnal,
Sometimes, yeah, they might be in the nest, or they might be out getting food. I don't know. But yeah, they're nocturnal. You don't see, well, I never see them hardly during the day. Like that shot I showed you of them on the water.
The nest taking a nap.
Sometimes they are.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
they might be in another crevice. They don't build a nest. They just find a little alcove or a cleft in the rock, and then they just scooch out a spot. But they have some to encourage nesting when that Scorpion Rock was once completely covered in crystalline ice plant, which is a non-native plant. And so back in 2008, the seabird biologists would paddle out there in kayaks, and they tore out thousands of pounds of crystalline ice plant. And that back where we keep our kayaking gear, in the corral, the old historic corral, they have an island nursery. And they would paddle the plants, the native plants, the island plants, out to Scorpion Rock, and they planted about 15,000 plants. And then everything was watered by hand. And then to bring the birds back, because all the birds left because of the crystalline ice plant, they couldn't nest. So to bring the birds back during the wintertime and in the first part of spring, they would set up solar panels, hook them up to an MP3 player, and then they would play bird song calls of those particular species. Basically love song calls to attract the birds. So it's worked out really well. All the species are there again, and that's one of those conservation projects that's really gone well out there. And that's another bird that also nests on Scorpion Rock. That's a ashy storm petrel, another nocturnal bird. They kind of, if you see them at night, they have a similar flight pattern as a bat. But what the biologists do to bring them in, so they can band them and check them, what sex and maybe some blood they take. But they play the bird song call of the ashy storm petrel. So from afar, Scorpion Rock at night looks like maybe a concert at the county bowl or something. There's a lot of these lights and sounds and everything, and just to bring the birds in. It's another bird that utilizes the islands for breeding and nesting. Those are called pigeon guillemots. And guillemot is spelled Guillemot, and that's a breeding pair, and they're just kind of coming together right there, and they nest in the rock out on the islands. So I love their feet, their orange feet, and they have orange throats as well.
It's like they've been designed.
Yeah. This is San Miguel Island. That's Kyler Harbor. That's one of the prettiest places out on the islands, and this is where you are dropped off by island packers, and then you walk up the canyon. So I'm on the trail heading up Night River Canyon up to the campground, and I paddled out there during the pandemic in May of 2020, and I went around Santa Cruz, I went around Santa Rosa, and then I crossed the channel over to San Miguel Island, and I was looking for some birds that are now nesting out there again after about a 100-year absence. They're called common mirrors, and historically Prince Island was the most southerly breeding rookery for common mirrors. Prince Island's out here. It's about a quarter mile, maybe, or half a mile off the island. But those are all elephant seals. You see how far they come. That's all elephant seals there. But then they come up here to wallow, and there's a natural spring that flows down out of Night River Canyon, and then they just kind of wallow in that pool of water that's developed with rain and moisture that accumulates through the winter.
So are you walking right past them? Is that okay?
I'm way up above them. I'm maybe I'm 100 feet above them, maybe.
So is that fresh water? Or?
Yes.
So they can do.
They like both. Oh yeah, yeah, they love it.
It's like a vacation.
Yeah, it is. It is. And now that you just said that, this is my elephant seal day spa. So you can only get to this spot if you're in a kayak. And I will always say this till my last breath that kayaking is the best way to see the islands. There's just so many places you can't get to on foot or even in a boat. You need a kayak to access all these little nooks and crannies, and this is one of those little nooks and crannies. And I looked inside here, and they were all just sticking their snouts up in the air, and they were just soaking in the sun. They looked like, I don't know, they looked like they were worshiping the sun. They didn't care I was there and all. They actually came a lot closer, like I could have reached out and touched them if I wanted to. But you can see that water, it's gorgeous, and it's just like a pool in there, and they were all enjoying it. The other day I was there, and I counted 10 animals in there just wallowing.
Is that water warm?
Nah, yeah, it's colder out there. I mean, it's chilly out there at San Miguel. You get the California current coming down, and there's a lot of cold current coming out of there. This is also San Miguel Island. This is my friend Danny from a few years ago. This is Kyler Harbor, so that's Prince Island. That's a very important seabird site, and the elephant seals in that pool are over here, up behind those sand dunes. And we were just leaving to paddle around the whole island. It's about 27 miles of coastal miles. But that's a beautiful spot to be in at sunrise. And these are those common mirrors. So if you go back to this shot, that knob right there, that column, that's where they're nesting. And so I had heard they'd been out there, but nobody had documented anything. It's very difficult to get to. They nest in the most exposed spot for wind and swell, so it's a little tricky getting photos. But there's about 200 nesting pairs of common mirrors there now, after being extinct, for 100 years. Egg collecting and just disturbance over the years. And so the seabird biologist told me that they did an aerial survey this past year, and that the colony is growing leaps and bounds out there. So there's other places to go look for them now. Okay, so this is kind of a spooky spot. That's Castle Rock. That's a rock outcropping out to the northwest, just off San Miguel Island. And of course, there's a pair of sea lions sitting there on the rock. But that region is known as Shark Park for obvious reasons. There's a lot of animals out there. The food chain is alive and well out there. There's just Point Bennett alone, there's about 30,000 seals and sea lions out there. You got 6 different species out there. Those, of course, California sea lions outnumber everything. There's about 300,000 of them in the channel and around the islands. And then you have northern elephant seals, harbor seals, Guadalupe fur seals have returned and are beginning to pup again on San Miguel Island. And then you have northern fur seals. There's about 10,000 of them. And then there's some stellar sea lions that come down from Alaska. So there's lots of sounds and smells and lots of drama out there. So usually when I go out there to work as a volunteer ranger, I look for a window so I can paddle around the island, because photographically, I mean, anything could happen out there.
The seal species all get along with each other?
There's a lot of kumbaya moments, and then there's some bickering as well. So this is another look at Point Bennett. And see, these are all northern elephant seals, a lot of pups in there. And so the mothers will nurse their pups, and then they leave their pups for about a week, and they go hunting for food out in deep water. And then they come back and they call their pups, and they all have this very distinct sound, and they know which one's theirs, and then they go find their pup. The dads are gone mostly. They're out of there. Yeah, they're basically love them and leave them types, And, the pups, maybe they're 30 pounds right there. They're born in July. I shot this in October, so they're just a few months old. But they're hilarious. They're my favorites. They have these snub faces and ears that go out like this. Look like little Yodas out in the water, and then they're really sweet. And look at those faces, huh? Pretty cute. Incredible animals, though. This is one of the most amazing animals on the planet, I think. That's a shot I took of myself. A lot of times I have to take pictures of myself because nobody's with me. So anyway, perspective or whatever. But that's East Point on Santa Rosa Island, and that's kind of what things look like inside of my tent. That's pretty organized for me. But there's animals all over the place there, mostly elephant seals. And that's the front side of Santa Rosa Island. That's my friend Danny up front, and then my friend Craig just beyond that. And we paddled around Santa Rosa Island and San Miguel Island in a few days. And we were coming back down to Betcher's Bay from there to catch the boat. I think we caught it the next day. But as you can see, there's no beaches there. It's all cliff. So, you're not.
Guano again on the cliffs?
Sorry?
Is that guano again?
No, that's just maybe it's a lot of diatomaceous earth or sandstone. Yeah, that's not sea guano there. Seabird guano, no. But heavily wave battered. There's no place to land there. And there's stretches of that out there at the islands where it's just cliff, and it's really exposed to wind and swell. So this is the north side of Santa Rosa Island. So that's a good example of sea lions warming themselves on the water with their pectoral flippers, and that's the west end of Santa Cruz. So I'm paddling across from Santa Rosa Island in the passage there out to Santa Cruz. The winds were blowing 47 and gusting to 60, and I was by myself, and there's a place in there called Coati Point on Santa Rosa. It's this really long, rocky finger, and the sea lions are all over the place there. And the surf was big, and the wind was really strong. And I almost had a mishap there and crashed into Coati Point just because of the swells all over the place. But anyway, I was going to take a break there in Betcher's Bay, and I said, the heck with it. And I just kept going. I went all the way across to Santa Cruz. So that's one of the sea caves out there at Santa Cruz. It's all natural light. It's all sun reflecting off the bottom and then bouncing up and hitting the ceiling of that cave. And you see the kind of the greenish red color in the ceiling. And there's more between Santa Cruz and Anacapa Island. You have more sea caves documented there than anywhere else in the world. You have close to 300, and virtually all of those are on the north side of each one of those islands. You go on the other side of the islands, the south side, and you won't find a single cave. It's because of where they're facing. They're facing due north, so that's where we get a lot of our exposure from wind and swell. So heavily wave battered, very weather beaten. It's one of the reasons why those caves are there. And that's giant coreopsis blooming. That's one of the very first flowers that blooms in the spring. And this is Scorpion Anchorage. This is the main hub of the park. So that's Scorpion Rock out there, and there's Anacapa out in the background. But yeah, it's really the contrast of the volcanic rock with the coreopsis is really amazing to see. That's a very nice day out there. That's a shot I took before work. And that is A-03. He's kind of become a celebrity at Scorpion Anchorage the last almost 2 years now. So during the pandemic, we started working again at Scorpion Anchorage in February 2021. And immediately we started seeing this guy. And I was hoping he was going to stick around because I felt like he moved in there, during the pandemic, and there was no people, there was no disturbance. Plus, they were building a new pier, so there just wasn't any access. So he showed up, and I was hoping he would stick around, and he has stuck around. I see him maybe 75% of the time I'm leading trips out there. So he needed a mate, and we think he has one. We're seeing him with a female, and the females are about 25% bigger than the males. And he's got a cool story. He has two brothers, 02 and 04. 02 is out on Santa Rosa Island and made his first nesting attempt, which was unsuccessful but normal early on. He's about 6 years old, these birds. And his other brother I saw for the first time out on San Miguel Island at a place called Cardwell Point. And I was able to get some shots of him from the kayak. But him, 03, I get really good access to him. So I took this, I hung over the edge of the cliff to get that. But a lot of shots I get from the water. So him and his two brothers, they were born out on the west end of Santa Cruz at a place called Fraser Point. And if you go to the Channel Islands National Park website, they have something on there called the Eagle Cam. And there's a webcam on that nest where he came from. His mother's name is Cruz, and his father's passed away. So they're monogamous birds. So she is paired up with another eagle now, and she had 2 more eaglets this year. So he is a great example of bald eagle recovery out on the islands. So we get to see him all the time, and it's hilarious watching him and her. There she is on the left. She doesn't have the blue wing. So if the biologist can get to a nest, they will tag the birds. They'll put a blue wing, and that represents the Channel Islands National Park birds. If they come from Catalina Island, they have orange tags on their shoulders. And because they're monogamous, they'll stay together until one of them doesn't survive. So there is a pair on Santa Cruz. One bird is from Catalina, and the other one is from the Channel Islands National Park. And they've been together for about 17 years now. And they've reared at least 14 eaglets to survival so far. So hoping these two, haven't seen them doing any breeding rituals. What they do is, what I really want to get is they're flying in the air together, and all of a sudden they lock talons, and then they do these cartwheels before they hit the water. Yeah, so I haven't seen that yet. I do see them hanging out together a lot, and it's been about 6 months of that. So I did see them together the other day. So we'll see what happens. Really curious to see what happens. But there's about 50 bald eagles now on the northern chain, and that's Anacapa, Santa Cruz, Santa Rosa, and San Miguel. That's the northern chain. So there's about 12 breeding pairs and another 24, 25 individuals. So that's...
Do you know what their sexual maturity age is?
5 years old, they're ready to go. Yeah, so these birds are all, I don't know how old she is. She's a mystery. She doesn't have any tags. She does have a silver band on her talon. So she has been attended to in some way, but she doesn't have a tag from Catalina or the Channel Islands National Park.
Did you say that most of them don't have the capacity to go to the middle?
Well, when they're young, young birds, just fledge the nest, maybe a year old, and yeah, they get that gumption to go fly across the channel, and it's too much for them. So, but they're doing really well. It's great seeing them on all the islands now. They don't like the gulls, and the gulls don't like them. But it's pretty funny. So that's 03 again, and I shot this from my kayak. And so across the way here is Scorpion Rock. And nesting season is, yeah, he's sitting in a bunch of dormant Coreopsis. And so Scorpion Rock, March through June, is utter chaos out there with all the gull nests and everything. 03 and his partner, they love to buzz Scorpion Rock just to upset all the gulls. So they'll just fly. I mean, they could kill one if they wanted to, but I've never seen them do it. They just fly over Scorpion Rock just to make them mad, and then all the gulls take off after them. Literally every gull lifts off the rock and gives chase. So one day I saw him from the cliff. He buzzed Scorpion Rock. All the gulls come off, and he nabs a fish, and he flipped it behind him in the air, and all the gulls went after the fish. And then he flies a little bit further, and he grabs a fish for himself, and he took to the cliff. And I was like, all right. So now I was like, all right, he's got it figured out. So, but yeah, you see a lot of this interaction going on. I think probably everyone knows that DDT, wreaked havoc on bald eagles and California brown pelicans, but they also did on peregrine falcons, and they've made an amazing comeback out there as well. So we have about 17 nesting pairs of peregrine falcon out on Santa Cruz Island alone. So this is not last summer, but the summer before, and this peregrine is subduing a male common loon. So it hit it out on the water, pretty far out, and I watched it carry it. I was watching it from the kayak, and I watched it carrying it back to the cliff, and almost couldn't do it because the common loon is about as big as the peregrine. He was almost dragging it in the water to get it to the cliff, and then rested there, and then had to occasionally subdue the bird. The bird's still alive right there. It's flapping its wings, and he's got a pretty good hold on it. And he stayed there for about 20 minutes, and he flew off to his nest somewhere around the corner. But fastest animal in the world, fastest flying bird in the world. They can get well over 200 miles an hour on a dive. And so that's their strategy when it comes to hunting. They hit things at that speed, and it injures them or kills their prey immediately. So one of my favorite things to see out there is these guys. And that's the island scrub jay. This is the only place in the world you can see it is on Santa Cruz Island. And they are the eco-engineers of Santa Cruz Island. So it has an acorn there, a green one, a freshie. And it's incredible what these birds are able to accomplish. So so there's about 2,000 island scrub jays on Santa Cruz Island, and each one of those adults can cache 3,500 to 6,500 acorns a year. And so what they do innately is they find the acorn, and they know to plant the acorn point down. And then they also know to plant up slope, because fog drip is the largest water input out there. So these little seedlings that are growing up on the ridge tops of the island catch that moisture, and then everything just kind of works itself down the creeks back down to the ocean. But these are amazing birds. Their cousin is the western scrub jay, which I'm sure you guys have a lot of them around here. But they're a prettier bird. They're a third size bigger. They're a deeper blue, and they have a longer bill. So I've worked with some of the biologists from the Smithsonian who do regular work with these birds, and they're telling me that there's this kind of this Darwinism thing going on with these birds on the island. There's, of course, acorns with the oak trees, but there's also there's bishop pines out there, and bishop pines, the islands are the farthest south you find a bishop pine, and there's birds that the jays prefer the bishop pine over the acorn. So the birds that like the acorn have a straight beak, but the birds that like the pine nuts have a curved beak. And so there's this, you ever heard of Darwin's finches on the Galapagos Islands? The same thing is going on as we speak out there on the island. They call it an ecotone, where the pines and the oaks kind of grow in the same habitat. So really interesting to see. I actually have some pictures. I didn't know it. I have pictures of the birds with the curved beak. That's another example of, it's not just acorns. That's a island scrub jay that has just caught a southern alligator lizard and ripped its tail off. And I saw it do this within a week twice, and flushed the lizard out of the woodpile and then ripped the tail off, and then carried the tail and the lizard back to the nest.
Oh, no. Greedy guy.
Yeah.
Goodness.
I'm pretty close, like maybe 25 feet or so. This is in the corral too, where we keep our gear. So they're pretty curious birds. They get pretty close.
There he is.
Well, I guess these are probably my favorite thing to photograph out there. I guess I don't have much choice. They're all over the place. And this is one of the old agaves that is growing inside the ranch house area at Scorpion Canyon, the Guarini Ranch. They were one of the last families, the ranch out there. So foxes out there that are really nimble. They're fantastic tree climbers. They have semi-retractable claws, and so they go up and down trees like cats. And they go after, a couple old fig trees out there left over from the ranching are like 100 years old, so it's really fun to photograph them when they're climbing in the very, shortest limbs and just counterbalancing with their tail and figuring things out and getting the figs. I don't know if you can see, but there's a mouse being flung up here in the top of the frame. So when they started building the new pier, we had to move over to Prisoners Harbor, and it was kind of a makeshift guiding kayak guiding post. And so this fox, he was the runt of his litter. And when I first saw him, I felt really bad for him. I just didn't think he was going to survive. And then weeks went on. I was like, oh, he's getting bigger. He's getting stronger. He's figuring things out. And usually I would do a run from Prisoners to Pelican and back. And every time I get back to the old watchtower overlooking Prisoners Harbor, he would jump out on the trail and wanted to play. And he wanted to play chase, which, you know, they're like grease lightning out there. They fly down the trails. Anyway, I catch up to him, and he's down by the kayaks, and he's playing. He's like a big jungle gym. He's just pulling all the bungee cords and pulling on our bow lines and just rolling around. And it was getting dark, and I, you know, went to the tent. And early the next morning, he shows up, and he's got this mouse. And he drops it right at my tent door. And I was like reaching for my camera, and then he grabbed the mouse and he took off, and he went back to the kayaks, and then he started playing with the mouse and flipping in the air and rolling on it, and that went on for like a half an hour until he finally devoured it. So he was really cute.
There we go.
Yeah, good. That's a good one.
That's a Christmas card.
Yeah.
There you go.
So yeah, they're really nimble, and they get up in those skinny limbs and maneuver around, and they love those figs. This year was some really good figs. Yeah, they were big and healthy. Yeah, well, that's the smallest fox species in North America. They're only about 4 pounds, but they're the largest land predator on the island. So they're always fun. This is not this past summer, but the summer before. She's no longer around. That's the mom, and she's nursing 2 of her cubs. That was her last litter. And the one that's looking up at her, it was the more aggressive one, and was more outgoing and full of himself. The other one, you can't see its face. Here, I'll give you a better look at them. There they are. They look like little grizzly bears. They were like this big at that point. I mean, they're small. So the one up front is the more aggressive one, and he would come up and he would tug on my finger. And the other one would come up and just rub its muzzle on my finger. But they would sit at my feet. I have little videos of them just squeaking. They're just super cute. And they were in the corral. The parents moved them up into the corral where we have our kayaking gear, so we were seeing them every day, all day, growing up. And so it was a lot of fun to photograph and spend time with them.
What time of year is this?
This is May. They just beat the snot out of each other. They stole a glove. We're out of there. That's my last image. Looks like he's laying on a bed of lettuce. A lot of kelp, but yeah, it's a harbor seal, and healthy one. They get about 300 pounds, full size. You think about the other side of the spectrum there, and the bull elephant seal gets to about 3,000 to 5,000 pounds. So that gives you an idea of the 6 species out there, those seals and sea lions. But that's also shot from the kayak. So yeah, most of the shots that you see there were from a kayak, probably 70, 75%. Anyway, that's it.